I'm Katie Horvath, and I'm here today with Brian Everaert, the People's Party of Canada candidate for Sarnia, Lambton. Thanks for letting me record this interview and your time spent talking to me today.
Well, thanks for coming by, and I'm glad to have you here, and I'm glad you're going to start asking some questions because I think it's important that people get to know who I am and what I stand for, and I'm sure hoping that they'll vote for me in this upcoming election on October 21st.
Okay, well, let's get to it.
Okay.
So I will get into the PPC platform and give you a chance to answer some of the questions on what's being proposed. But first, I'd like to know a little bit about you personally and what you do here in Sarnia, Lambton. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live out near Wilkesport. I have a 25-acre hobby farm out there. I have my spouse Shannon and two kids, Devin and Caitlin. I'm a union iron worker. I've been working in Sarnia off and on. Sometimes I've been on the road as well. I traveled out to Alberta for a few years, but mainly been here for around 23 years as an iron worker, journeyman iron worker for 23 years. And right now I'm working over at Nova at the new expansion AST2 project. I'm the Joint Health and Safety Committee rep on site out there in an elected position, so I represent all the trades and for the workers out on that new job site.
Okay, great, thank you. From the bio that was submitted last month, you stated you've been political as far back as you can remember. So can you tell me a little bit about that statement and also why you decided to run for the PPC this year?
Well, I have been political my whole life, even in my early teens. Kind of some of my friends thought it was quite strange, but I've always been intrigued by politics, interested in politics. I can't explain why. It's just something that I've had in my blood, so to speak. I like how there's different tactics, different plays, the way that the maneuvers of the politicians. I've always admired the way that they go through to get things done in the country. A lot of times they get a bad rap, but I see through a lot of that as to what it takes to get things done. It's very, very, it can be very hard sometimes, and I realize that. It's that way for a reason, to make sure that things are talked about enough before we get decisions made. So I think that's basically what drew me into it, is to watch the different tactics used to get stuff passed for Canadians, and that's basically it. Like, I'm very interested in watching how they get things done, I guess.
Right. Okay, thank you. So for those who don't know, Maxime Bernier left the Conservative Party last year and formed his own party, saying that the Conservatives are morally and intellectually corrupted now. Mm-hmm. So could you elaborate on that statement and explain how the PPC is less corrupt or more intellectually and morally superior than the Conservatives? Well,
it goes back to, I followed the Conservative Party for years, and to me it goes back to their leadership election. When Scheer beat out Maxime, they destroyed the ballots directly after the ballots were cast, and there was some questions about more ballots than there were voters. So when that happened, I did my own investigating, and I found out that they had an auditor there that was Deloitte. And when Deloitte was questioned, they didn't audit. They were there to observe only. That's what they said to the news. And when I heard that, I knew something was going on. So, and I had been following Maxime Bernier. I expected him to be the leader. There was some rumors of binders found on the floor with tactics from the dairy cartel in Quebec. They were signing up people left and right before the vote to try to sway the vote. They succeeded. But what they did when they did that was they stained the party. And they took the Conservative out of the Conservative Party, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people haven't realized that yet. They are going to realize that. As far as I'm concerned, the party is not going to recover. They picked a weak leader. We've seen it today with Andrew Scheer. He doesn't tell things. He needs to be asked them. He's a dual citizen. He's an American citizen. We found that out today. That's fine. The issue that I have with it is exactly what I figured it was he's not being forthright with telling people. We shouldn't have to ask the politicians or leaders what's going on. They should be out telling us what's happening. So just to elaborate, the same thing. Like I'll get off on a little bit of a tangent here, but the SNC scandal, it happened, and everybody wants to put it as a liberal issue. But the fact of the matter is, the DPA was passed in the budget in 2018, which is the deferred prosecution agreement, the one that SNC was going to use. Not one Conservative member came home, including ours, and talked about the DPA. Isn't that funny? And then when it took a Liberal to rat them out and pull it out, and well, what cards are they going to play? They're going to say, oh, look at Trudeau, look at Trudeau. Well, yeah, Trudeau was wrong, and the Liberals were wrong. But what I really find wrong and appalling was that they let it go. They hurt this country by sitting on their hands, and they didn't want to lose votes in Quebec. So they were whipped, guaranteed. The party whipped them into silence, the MPs, and we had the big mess what we had. And it didn't have to happen. If they would have come to the people and told us about the DPA, I'm sure we would have all had something to say about it.
Okay, fair enough. So let's talk about freedom of expression. So I'm pulling this right from your party's website. Your party believes the rights of Canadians to freely hold and express beliefs are being eroded at an alarming speed under the Trudeau government. Another quote I found, Canadians are being forced to express support for the existence of various gender identities beyond biological categories of male and female. They're restricting the right to criticize religion and claims that the government launched a series of regulatory attacks on free speech. So my question for you is, what is the line in the PPC parties between free speech and hate speech?
Well, that's a good question. I believe the PPC would like the citizens to judge. Once you get into the business of telling people what they can think or say, we need to understand who gets to make those rules. So let's say that you're a little bit a left-leaning person, and a Conservative government came in and passed a regulation or a law that says you can't speak about climate change. I don't think that's right. I think that we need to have the freedom as a Canadian. It is the base pillar of our freedom to be able to speak our minds and let the other people judge. It's words, and words, they cause emotional stirs, and yes, they can hurt. But the fact is it's too much of a slippery slope. We can't tell someone they can't say anything, because if we do that, like I say, who gets to decide what's right and what isn't? And it'll lead into something that isn't Canadian to me. Canadians can decide. So I don't want to put any restrictions on anyone's speech, and I don't think there's much of a fine line between free speech. Free speech is free speech. If you say something that you're going to regret or be called out on, that's your fault. Expect the consequences, but we should still be able to say what's on our minds and what we believe. If it's despicable, the people of the country will call you out. And you should be called out if you're doing stuff like that, but I don't think we should ever pass laws and dictate what people can say and do in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Your party says multiculturalism is based on the idea that there's no unified Canadian society or identity. The People's Party government says there is a Canadian identity, and furthermore, we must focus on what unites us as Canadians. So according to your party, what is the Canadian identity?
Well, according to the party, the Canadian identity is looking after your neighbor, accepting somebody for who they are. Somebody can love who they want. We don't want ideologies coming into the country that aren't within our Western civilization values, and that is treating your neighbor with respect. It doesn't matter who you are, what color your skin is, what language you speak. You have a right to believe what you worship who you want to worship. You have a right to love who you want to love. Like the LGBT community, obviously they've made great strides, and it's happened quite quickly. Like, I shouldn't say quickly, but it's happened. I'd say they've made great gains recently, and they need to keep those gains. And the thing is there's some people with ideologies that don't want that to happen. So I don't find that to be Canadian. I think everyone has a right to have freedom. They have a right to express themselves. They have a right to choose who their partners are. They have children have a right to a safe walk to school. Just stuff like that. That's really what I think Canadian values are. Basically, everybody you see down at the coffee shop, and we want to keep it that way. We don't believe women's rights, the same thing. Like, there's some ideologies that are trying to force their way into this country that don't believe women should be equal or treated equal or are equal. And the PPC party does not believe in that, and we will stand up for the rights of all the people in Canada, and every Canadian should be treated equal in all aspects.
Right. Okay, thank you. So on that note, there has been criticism of the party saying that you guys are anti-refugee and anti-immigration, racist, xenophobic. So I want to know, what is your party's official immigration policy?
Well, right now, the Trudeau government, I think they want $350,000 a year. The thing is, with what happens is, for example, in Sarnia, Lambton, we have a low-income housing problem in Sarnia, Lambton, and it just seems to go on and on and on. And we just keep on bringing more people. And I think we need to take care of the people that are in need in Canada first. And if we can raise immigration levels after that, then that's fine. But you can't keep piling people on a system that's crippled right now. It is being held down because we keep on bringing more and more people into it. It's not just immigrants that are flooding into low-income housing, but it doesn't help. So there's some things we can do, and that is we want to ensure that they're economic immigrants. We want to cut it down to 150,000, and to me that's a lot. We've been criticized as anti-immigrant. Well, 150,000 is a lot of immigrants. So I don't understand where people are coming from, and we're doing it in order to help the least fortunate among us so that we can slow it down a bit, get them into low-income housing, save some money, and get back on track. So that's our policy. We want to bring 150,000 a year. We want them to be economic immigrants. We want them to be able to come to Canada. We want them to learn to speak the one official language. We want them to be able to get into employment. I mean, there's a study, a reporter told me not too long ago that 80% of immigrants go to work. And I agree with that. I think they do. But you got to remember, 350,000, 20%, 70,000. If you continue to do that for 10 years, that's 700,000 people that are forced into Canada that aren't going to work in 10 years. That sounds bad. Like, when you talk about facts, it sounds bad, but you've got to run the country on fact and not emotion, and that's what the PPC party intends to do.
Okay. And how about the party's refugee policy?
Well, right now, obviously, the Prime Minister has said, he said we'll welcome refugees from the United States. They're crossing in Quebec. The problem with that is they're crossing in the illegal area. It's putting strain on our immigration system as far as it goes with our RCMP having to be at illegal crossings. We believe that refugees should be crossing at the border points, the legal border points. Another thing that is going on is these people are coming some from New York or different areas, and we don't believe they're real refugees. We want to bring in refugees who are being persecuted in their own countries, and I believe that that's the best policy. We can't say somebody is a refugee if they're coming from the United States. They're just simply not a refugee, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to ensure if they come through the normal border crossing point, we will send them back to the United States. That's right out from Maxime Bernier, our leader, and I agree with him. So we're going to help people. We want to help legitimate refugees. Absolutely, we need to. Canada is a generous country. We have to watch out. There's a lot of tyrants around the world who are treating their people very badly, or in war situations they need to escape. The PPC government will do that. Absolutely. We will represent and be good Canadians like we do. But this other thing about crossing illegal border crossings, those are not refugees. We don't consider them refugees. If they're coming out of the United States, obviously they're coming into the country illegally. We'd like to send those people back to the United States.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to talk about the environment. Can you comment on your party's take on climate change, and additionally your approach to environmental policy and protection?
Well, we say in our policy we want to protect the land, the air, and the water, and with sound environmental policy. The PPC believes that Canada is a steward of the environment already. We do protect the environment. Look at how clean, like if you take a look here in Sarnia, you go back in the 70s and look at the river. There's been so much done for that they've cleaned up that, it's amazing how far they've come. And this pressure from climate alarmism is just driving me crazy because they don't understand that. And I said it last night at the debate, they're going to knock the knees out from under our businesses in Sarnia, Lambton, knee-jerk reaction. And I'm not too keen on that. In fact, I'm standing up for it. As far as climate change goes, our policy is we're going to leave that. If the provinces think that they can manage climate change issues, we're going to leave it to them. We don't want to bring in any climate change policies, but we do believe the climate is changing. We don't believe there's a climate emergency. I was quite disappointed here in Sarnia when they passed the climate emergency measure. I don't think it did anything except to send a signal to the boardrooms of the people who provide us our jobs and run and create business for our economy. I think it sent a signal that there's a fight for them in the future to stay in Sarnia. And when you do that to the companies in this town, and you drive them out, where do you think they're going to go? They'll go to a place with less regulation. And what are they going to do when they get there? I'm not saying they would, but the odds are with less regulation, there's more pollution. So in fact, in doing it, taking them out of the Canadian market and sending them elsewhere is a huge mistake. It is an unintended consequence that the alarmists don't think about, and that's the problem. They think one step ahead when they should be thinking a lot further ahead as to what their actions now are going to do for the future of Sarnia Lambton.
Okay, thank you. So Canada spends a lot on healthcare.
That's mine.
That's okay.
Oh,
That's okay.
are you going to cut it out?
I mean, it happened. Life happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
My phone went off.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. That's okay. So Canada spends a lot on healthcare, but we also face some of the largest wait times in the developed world. Can you explain the PPC plan to replace the Canada Health Transfer? So what does that look like? And could you expand on that?
Yes, right now the system in place is the provinces collect taxes and they submit them to the federal government. Well, if you think about it, there's a whole bureaucracy there to transfer that tax to the Canadian government, and then the government divvies the tax back to the provinces. So basically what our plan is to allow the provinces to collect the tax, and they don't have to give it to the federal government. They can use the money they collect in tax to supply themselves for health care. So that's what we want to do.
Okay, thank you. We're just about done here. Just a couple more questions. So I did want to touch on the supply management issue. I keep seeing that coming up in your guys' platform.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hear from your perspective. Why do you think it's inefficient and unfair? And what does your party plan to do to fix the issue?
Well, to fix the issue, we're basically going to phase it out in 5 years. It is, I got to say, when I got involved with the PPC, it was one of the issues that I had a problem with. I really did, because anytime you think about something that looks like an attack on farmers, it was hard at first. When I read it in the policy and platform, I thought, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But as I took a look at what actually is going on and the fact that it shuns out young farmers, what it does is it takes from the ability for us to trade to other countries in other agricultural products. So it's 10% of the farm industry, and the other 90% suffer. An example, Japan, they wanted beef. They wanted to be able to, we wanted to send them beef, but we wouldn't take their milk or dairy products. So they said, we're going to cap what you can bring in beef. So the direct result was the beef farmer is losing, because we have what amounts to a cartel that fixes prices on milk, dairy, and poultry and eggs, and it's just not fair. Our social services and stuff like that in the community, it's a huge cost, because these families are spending big money, and I brought it up at a debate that, that extra $5 to me might not make that big a difference. But to someone with kids, it does. And if we can drop the price of milk, eggs, and dairy down, or poultry down, and bring it down to 30 to 60%, that's a huge issue. Like if you go across the bridge, you can pick up what we have to pay $7 for 99 cents sometimes. So it also opens the door up for a market. Well, recently a man was charged $30,000 for smuggling 8,000 pounds of cheese into the country. It's it seems funny on the surface, but really it tells you a lot of what's actually going on. It reminds me of some other things that go on with Canada, how they boycott or they make things out of reach for people. But yeah, it's an issue that I struggled with, but in the end I took a look at what it is, and it's 19,000 producers. It's a closed club. The quota is outrageously expensive, and you know who it hurts? It hurts the people with the least money. And I made an example about what if we did it with beef? What if the $15 steak at the supermarket, we put a $50 price tag on it? What if we did that? And to me, we could do that, and we could isolate our Canadian beef farmer, but I don't think it's good for consumers. So a free market. The other farmers have to be in a free market. I believe that once we get rid of supply management, we're going to phase it. It's going to cost us some money because we're going to buy them out of their quota. And they can choose to stay in, keep being producers. I see an opportunity for a huge co-op where they can, and we want to open the borders up. We want to be able to have them export their products, even in trade. Supply management gets in the way. Why should an auto worker in Windsor or a beef farmer out in Oil Springs have to worry about the trade stuff going on when all that seems to hold us up is supply management issues? We were held up for 6 or 7 weeks. Chrystia Freeland was over there trying to negotiate, and the whole thing that was delaying us was supply management, and it happens time and time again. So I think it's detrimental. I think we need to go to a free market, and definitely I got on board with it after I did some investigating as to what actually is going on.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. So I asked this to all candidates, and this is true. I have not yet decided who I'm going to vote for.
Okay.
So why should I vote for you?
Well, I think you should vote for me because I'm going to do what I say, and I know that's a cliche, but I'm an iron worker. A lot of people think I'm a little rough around the edges sometimes, but I tell the truth. I'll always tell the truth. I tell the truth even when it's not nice to tell the truth. And there's not many politicians out there. There's a lot of salespeople. It seems they want to give you everything. They'll have it, we're going to give you this, give you that. And to be quite honest, a lot of times they never come through with that. If I can't do it, I'll tell you. If I can do it, I'll work with you. And anybody in the community of Sarnia Lambton, if you need me to help you or you have an issue at any time, I will make time for everyone. I do it right now. As far as it goes, I see myself out there on social media. I don't see anybody else fighting the battle on social media. I'm not afraid to speak truth. I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind. And, I expect I get held to account for what I say, but the fact of the matter is I try to be decent to everyone. I believe that I love Canada. I know I do, and I want it to be prosperous. I have some fear about what's happening, and I think I'm a defender of business in Sarnia Lambton and a defender of the working people, and I'll go to bat for them every day if they elect me.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's all the questions that I have for you today, Brian. Again, I really appreciate your time, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity, if there's something you'd like to say that we haven't yet touched on, just any final thoughts that you have for the people watching.
Well, just to say that I've got to say during my campaign, there's been some ups and downs, but I can't believe how good my reception has been in Sarnia Lambton. I have people messaging me every day to keep going. You're doing it. This is what they're saying. Somebody was asking me about yard signs. Why aren't there as many up in the city this year? And I believe there's not as many up in the city this year because people are going to vote for me. and they're not putting my sign up there because there are some groups in town, very small amount of people, that they're bullies, and they've been bullying people in the community, my supporters. I think it's not the best thing, but I don't think they're the majority. And I believe that come election day, there'll be some surprises. And I think that it will be with the PPC candidate.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Brian, and good luck.
Well, thank you for coming, and I really enjoyed it, except for my phone.
That's okay. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.